Good morning, everyone. My name is Candace Witt, and I'm a spiritual prayer practitioner with Light on the Mountains. I'd like to welcome you all here today, both here and on live stream. It's wonderful to see your faces. Let's just take a moment and go within. I recognize the presence of that divine source, that one, the only, right here, right now, in this space, and in the center of each one of you. I know that that spark of the divine is at the center of my being, and I allow it to fill me and connect me to all it is. I know that it is a place where I can be, where I can know who I am. I can know the truth of each person that I see. I can see within each person that perfection of the art within each one of them. I know that for the truth that it is. I allow that source to connect all of the things that are important in life right now, here. I give thanks for Reverend John and his message, for R.L. and Max and their wonderful music, and for each one of you who make this center what it is. As together we say, and so it is. We've just returned from a trip to Europe, beginning with a number of days in London to accommodate the time change. We took many forms of public transportation and interacted with so many different people. We were staying in an area called Hampstead, a close connection by tube to all that London has to offer, but in essence, a small village within Greater London. Each morning, I watched out the window of our small London hotel at the pet store just across the street before it opened. Every day, there were people waiting, making conversation with each other as they waited for the store to open. In some ways, it reminded me of Sun Valley, with people on the street stopping to chat and knowing each other. This was in such great contrast to the people on the tube. There, with a crush of people, everyone seemed to be in their own little bubble, not sharing eye contact or interacting, even with the person sitting next to them. So how does this relate to our lives? I thought about Reverend John's blog on Begin with an A and how one need only remove the excess material to reveal the work of art within. Each of these myriad people, whether they were in comfortable surroundings with people they knew or in their own private bubble, were their own works of art in the process of revealing themselves. How do we as observers react to this? I was drawn to seeing each person from the perspective of Namaste, through the belief that the divine spark is the same in you and me, and I see that in you. This freed me from judgment. It allowed me to look at each person as an individual with that same spark in them, with the idea that each one's core there was goodness, that the differences are part of what make up this magnificent world we live in and should be celebrated. Something that really stood out was that even though each of these people were in their own bubble, they were also incredibly kind, reaching out and stepping out of that bubble to help in so many ways. They saw Ted's struggles, particularly on fast-moving buses and trains, and offered help, from giving him seats on the tube to helping with stairs, and even putting themselves in the closing doors of the train to prevent an impending disaster. And this sense continued for the rest of the trip, as we were in places with different cultures and languages and ways of life. I could see this sense of community with those who knew each other, and also that sense of the individual bubble in crowded situations. But through all of this, I still saw through the eyes of Namaste. I could imagine that work of art that was innately inside of each person, and I came home filled with that sense of connection, knowing that that spark of the divine resides in each one of us. Thank you. Let's just go ahead and say the affirmation together. It's on this insert. I perceive, are we ready? Everybody ready? They have their insert? I perceive everything as pure potential and possibility as I let go of any attachment to the forms of the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Candace. Good morning, everyone. Thought of the day. Let's see if I can put this all together into one thought. Welcome back, Ted and Candace. I got a picture on my phone last night. Someone sent me a photo, and it was of David and Allie. You know, David and Allie, who often sometimes sing here with us, and they were sitting at a table with Roger and Margie Gould, if you happen to know Roger and Margie, who live up in Ketchum. And I went, oh, that's really great. Where are you? London. They didn't go to London together. They bumped into each other at a production of Noises Off and went to the pub afterwards. I thought, isn't life crazy that you travel across the pond only to bump into someone that you know and end up with a delightful night? At the same time, parents of a former student of mine were walking up to say hello, and I don't know, gosh, 4 years ago, their family had been in Portland, Maine, and bumped into an old friend of mine from Virginia, and ended up somehow figuring out that they both knew me. Life is wild. My niece Paula is here. That's why I'm smiling big time. She's visiting from Virginia. Yeah. And so we've been talking about memories and things that pop up and that fall into place and all those good things. I don't know what any of that means, but that might be my thought of the day. I'm a little wound up. I think that's my thought of the day. Let's sing. Hi, John.
Hi. How are you? Good. I'm here. Good morning, everyone. I don't know if you remember this story, chance meetings. Whenever Mac and I travel, we always run into someone in the Wood River Valley. So we're always like, who we're going to see. Well, remember in 2019, we went to Paris and we ran into my brother. It shows you the lack or the level of communication in my family. So, like, oh, we should have known this. But we won't talk about family today, will we? So we have been reading together The Art of Possibility. And as Candace mentioned, one of the chapters I read this week was Begin with an A. And it led me to think about getting grades in grade school, which could be, I don't know how it is today. Maybe I'll ask some of you teachers to see if there's been a new method. But it could be one of the most stressful days for a student. So as many of you know, I went to Catholic school, which is, grade school is 8 years. And, in the 60s, they kind of ran a tight ship at the Catholic school, let me tell you. And we got report cards 4 times a year, 2 semesters at the halfway point and at the end of each semester. And about one of those times, and instead of sister whoever, just discreetly giving your report card, it's like in an envelope. You're not really supposed to show people at recess or compare them or anything like that. You bring them home, parents look, they sign it, you bring it back just to make sure. It's supposed to be, as it should be, somewhat confidential. But one of the 4 times in the year, our parish priest or the pastor would make a point to come in and pass them out. So what can I tell you about Father Kelly? I would imagine one of his largest talents would be to yell at kids to get off the lawn. If that tells you where he is. And he was very intimidating, an older guy, and he was Irish, so that shouldn't make anything, but with a very thick accent. And I don't know, I don't think he could smile to save his life. But so Father Kelly would come in, and of course, sisters say, oh, we're very excited today. Father Kelly's coming in. And we would like this is good news? I know. Teachers tell me, do you try to tell kids that bad news is good news by putting a smile on your face? When everyone is actually saying, let's run for the exits now. Oh, I have a tummy ache. Can I go see everyone's like, okay. And she wouldn't give us any, tomorrow Father Kelly's coming. It's like, guess what, kids? Father Kelly is coming in 15 minutes. And we're like, instantly things happening biologically that we weren't anticipating. And so this is what he would do. So he would very ceremoniously take his place at the teacher's desk. Sister whoever would go to the back. and he would have the stack of cards there. And he would call you one at a time, and you would come up, and he would be looking at your card, looking at you, looking at the card. I know. You're getting sick already, aren't you? It's like, why would they do this? This is abuse. And so, if you had good grades, it was like, oh yeah, just good job or whatever. But if you didn't, he had something to say about it. I know. Is this like the worst setup ever? But the whole thing, when it was announced that Father Kelly was coming, we just had this collective just anxiety, because we all knew which students were struggling in different areas. You know. I mean, we didn't really talk about it, but you knew. And these were people that were your friends. And even if they were some of them your frenemies, you didn't want to see them standing in front of the classroom actually being shamed in public, is what it was. And so when the ordeal was finally over, and goodbye, Father Kelly, we had his group, we had to say this. It was just like this relief. And the energy was just like, oh, thank God this had happened. And Sister, oh, isn't that great, Father Kelly's here? And we're like, no, it was not great that Father Kelly was here. But the reason why I bring this up, first of all, I think about, especially this week, I hadn't really thought about this whole report card thing in forever, since I was probably in 8th grade. Did that have a lifelong effect? I mean, really think of this. So when we look at our New Thought philosophy, part of this philosophy we teach is that the beliefs that you have created about yourself and the world and what's possible for you has a way of drawing to you those experiences. Now, it's not a direct formula, but if you believe that something's not available to you because maybe you're not smart enough, because someone told you weren't smart enough, chances are you won't pursue that thing because you've come to believe that why should I even bother? If that's been reinforced with you. And I think those things run very deep, and it's very complicated, and I think there's a lot about it that we don't really know. But generally, I mean, think for yourself. If someone said, hey, do you want to? And possibly you had one of two thoughts come in. One, yeah, let's do that. Or the other one was, oh, I couldn't do that. And it might not be based on like who would want to go. There's like, well, oh, what about the money? This, it's too far away. What am I going to do with my dog? You know what I mean? That we have this idea within this that we have a belief of why something may or may not be available to me. So in this chapter, begin with an A, it gave an alternative way to think about this or to experience that. Again, I hope you're reading the book. It's an easy read. It really is. You know how some of them is like, oh. No, this is an easy read that has a lot of deep subjects. So one of the authors of this book, Benjamin Zander, at the time of this book's publishing, first of all, he is a orchestral conductor. He also teaches or taught, I don't know if he still does, at the New England Conservatory. I guess it's in New England. It should be. And you can tell as he's talking about this, it's like, how do we get students past this anxiety of the judgment around grades? I mean, really think about it. And not only that, how can we set an atmosphere in classes where people go to be enthusiastic and excited about learning and not worried about, quote unquote, making a mistake? How could you create an atmosphere where the first thing walking in the door is concerned, how do I get the right grade level so that, because it will affect my other classes and what I'm going to do. I mean, I don't know about you, but going into classes, it was like, okay, what's the strategy in this class? It wasn't what I can learn in this class. I certainly was going to learn, but do you remember? It was like, what's the strategy to get a decent grade? And I did really well in school, not because I'm a genius, because I think I have kind of an intuitive thing of knowing what the teacher thinks is important. You know what I mean? And some people don't do that. You know, it's like you've got this fire hose of information, and you're supposed to figure out, quote unquote, what's important, or the question, if you're a teacher, that you're often asked, is it on the test? Isn't that it? Because it's like, if it's not on the test, well, I'm not going to waste even one brain cell on this. You know, I'm just going to, you know, he or she is just gabbing over there. It's not important. It's not of any value. And that's part of the thing, the stress of, quote unquote, a good grade with all this information. What's important? What do I focus on? In fact, it's funny, a friend of mine went to, had several classes together, and she also did very well grade-wise, but she didn't have that sense of knowing what's important and not important. And so she just, I don't know what she did. She just did everything. So I remember years later talking about a series of classes that had an exceptional amount of reading. I mean, like hundreds of pages. Just, oh, you remember that series of classes? God, were you just reading 24 hours a day? And I said, you did the reading? Because I knew from what was, quote unquote, intuitively was important, I probably did 20% of the reading. It's just like like I said, I just had a sense of this is important, that's important, and she was like up until 5 a.m. every day reading the thing. She said, why didn't you tell me? I said, I just thought you knew. Anyway, but that's part of the stress of the educational process. So he thought, well, especially with him having musicians in his class, which there's another level of self-judgment. You want to talk about any of that, you guys? So, like, if I fail in something academics, just, I couldn't figure it out. If you fail at something, quote unquote, fail, not do well, or perceive not to do well in the arts, that's like personal, isn't it? I mean, that's personal. Say, oh, that great thing that you studied to play and you rehearsed for 6 weeks, terrible. I mean, could you imagine? It's like, so this is what he's dealing in the classroom. And so he came up with this concept. So on the first day of his class, as it says in here, he tells his students that as long as you show up and are engaged in the material, today you start with an A letter grade. And there's nothing you can do to lose that except for, like, ghosting the class, basically. As long as you show up and truly engage, you have an A. And the reason for this is that he wanted students to be able to explore the material without fear of being disapproved of. That you could even go on a tangent that's completely different than, you know, the instructor thought you might, and maybe even something that's kind of like really just not really a good place to go, but you can't have that affect your grade. I mean, can you imagine? First when I read that, aren't you like shocked? It's like we've all made strategies to get a good grade, and he's saying you don't have to do that anymore. It's like, but there's something wrong here. And he shared some reaction of his students, how there was this sudden freedom to learn. In fact, he quoted this one young lady that was a foreign student, a student who came from another country in the world, and it was their cultural norm that you would not do anything to stand out in a classroom, especially if it would be to say something that it would turn out to be contrary to what the instructor had to say. It would be like putting this almost this light of shame on you, bless you. But suddenly realized that light bulb came on, that the student could share her opinion and it would be perfectly fine. And even if it was different than anyone else's opinion, it was her opinion and she had the right to it. I mean, just think of that. If suddenly you didn't have to worry about, is it on the test? And in fact, I've had some classes that the subject was so interesting and the class was made so uninteresting in having to figure out how to get a decent grade out of it. You know what I mean? It just turned into the slog of, okay, what are the rules in this class? What does he or she think is important? How does she give tests? You know what that means? It's like, if you didn't have to worry about that and just go to a subject that you found compelling, Wouldn't that be kind of amazing, actually? In fact, I've always said, we're all, I think most of us, lifelong learners. I would love to take university-level classes again without having to prove that I learned anything. You know what I mean? I don't want to have to prove I learned, at this point, it's like, I don't want to regurgitate a paper for you. I don't want to, like, show how great I am by telling you the right thing in class. I just want to be a fly in the wall. I just want to learn. I just want to, like, just take in the information and not how to prove that I did it. And I think this is how this class was. And so here's another thing they did. It's almost like he's been listening in on New Thought philosophy here, you know, or he came up to it on his own accord here. So here's another thing he had you do in the class. He say that by the end of the 2 weeks in class, if I'm remembering this correctly, says he wants each student to write a letter to him that can be publicly shared, I believe, because they were in here, imagining what person you had grown to be by the last day of the class. In other words, that you are open, this free-form learning to take in, and under this way this class was set up, who are you at the end of this class? How have you opened up? And I cut and paste one here, part of one here. So again, this is like towards the beginning of the class, and project how are you going to be at the end of this class. It says, I received my grade A because I worked hard and thought hard about myself taking your class. And the result was absolutely tremendous. I became a new person. I used to be so negative a person for almost everything, even before trying. Now I find myself a happier person than before. I couldn't accept my mistakes about a year ago. And after every mistake, I blame myself. But now I enjoy making mistakes, and I really learn from them. In my playing, I have more depth than before. I used to play just the notes, but now I found out about the real meaning of every piece, and I could play with more imagination. So isn't that a great affirmation to set up for yourself in this type of class? So how can we do that? How can we begin with an A? How can we begin with an A when you turn on the news? How can we begin with an A when we see yet another war breaking out in the Middle East? What does that even mean, in a sense? And how can we make the experience real, even though we see everything that we would put in the category of things going wrong, be it in our own life, in our communities, or beyond? And you can. And I don't mean in a way that what I call spiritual bypassing, meaning just, it's all good, it's all God, you know what I mean? Just I'm hiding, and that doesn't work either. So you almost, again, like putting oil and water together, these two ideas of here we are in the physical world with all the kind of the mess that we're dealing with, and there's our spiritual selves that is calling us to make this better. How do we put these together? So in the New Thought philosophy, you will find in reading, it will say, and often, that we are perfect, whole, and complete on the spiritual level. And we've had some pretty intense discussions about this in our classwork, how it can seem to many of us, again, as you turn on the news or have personal tragedies in your life and your family, to say those words. I am perfect, whole, and complete. Like I said, so much evidence is that we are not. But think of this class again. So it's not saying that we have had a lot of outcomes that we would prefer to not have. We do. And from very personal to worldwide, we have them. And in many ways, it's hard to even come up with a why of why they are here. You know what I mean? Bless you. And so the why is less important. But what is more important is what do we do with them? So perfect, whole, and complete means the power and presence of the divine is within all things, in spite of what we do here. We're like a bunch of crazy kids on the playground that are, acting up. But that doesn't mean that that essence isn't still there. So it's, in a way, like in this example of starting a class beginning with an A, is that as we step out into our lives each and every day, to begin with the knowledge that in spite of what we see and in spite of the choices we've made with our free will, that there is a wholeness that is underlying all things. So as Ernest Holmes said, don't deny the difficult circumstances. But we can reveal healing in the difficult circumstances. Some of these healing revelations will be reasonably quick. If you're upset with a friend, call them and apologize. Your healing will come quickly. But we have many more things that are so much more complex. I used a quote from this book in my blog this week that I just love, and looking at this idea of not only being perfect, whole, and complete, but that healing is not something that you evolve towards, but is something that you uncover. So again, this is from The Art of Possibility. It says, Michelangelo is often quoted as having said that inside every block of stone or marble dwells a beautiful statue. One need only remove the excess material to reveal the work of art within. If we were to apply this visionary concept to education, it would be pointless to compare one child to another. Instead, all the energy would be focused on chipping away at the stone, getting rid of whatever is in the way of each child's developing skills, mastery, and self-expression. So if we could start in this idea of perfection and wholeness, that it is there, and we need to chip away at our behavior, chip away at our belief that something can't be, chip away at our unwillingness to see something differently. I thought another great example of that, have you ever had a crown put in your mouth? Have you? Do you know when it's not perfectly sized yet, how it feels like you have a boulder in your mouth? Like, I just paid $1,200 for that. I'm going to be like this for the rest of my life. And he or she goes in and just goes zit, 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 and you go, oh, now we're talking. It's fitting right in there. But it's funny how that little thing makes you think, if you want to be a drama person, my life is ruined. I will never be able to chew correctly again. Why did I come to this dentist? Then boop, 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 boop. Oh, I guess it's okay. I guess you are a good dentist. But we can see the circumstances and conditions in our life very similarly. Things can seem beyond healing or beyond repair. And again, there is quite a bit of evidence to show us in the human world that would be true. And again, I don't even know how to have an opinion about the Middle East at this point. I mean, and it's really not a judgment on anyone. I don't know how to make sense of it. I am completely at a loss. The only thing that I can know, so rather, let's just talk about that for a second. So as human beings, what do we want to do first? We want to find a solution. We want to place blame on a situation that has been complex for how many generations? So again, I'm really not saying it's bad on both sides or anything. I'm just saying it is such a big topic that I can't even begin to have an opinion, other than the presence of the divine is in there somewhere. That's all I've got, basically. The presence of the divine is in there somewhere. And we can collectively, and it's not just about quote-unquote them, we can collectively as a world community choose to reveal the healing that needs to be revealed. So again, it's not turning on the TV and saying they really need to get their act together. We have created this collectively. And you say, why would we do such a thing? I don't know. I don't have that answer either. And many things are like that. You can be at a loss, and again, we first go into problem-solving mode. If I would only. And at this point, all I can do is bring it to a level of consciousness and know the power and presence of the divine is here. And that's all I can do at the moment, myself. Here, how many thousand miles away, that's all that's within my power. Because look at this, and I think this is such a good subject. So if more people were in the state of consciousness with the belief that healing could be revealed than a group of people saying healing is never possible, I actually think that as this group grows, that's when healing starts to happen. So if you have, affirmation is really very, very strong. So if you have 8 billion people saying healing is not possible in this area, guess what? Not possible. It's never going to happen. But if you have a critical mass of people saying, I can't see it, I have no clue how it will ever be, but energetically I'm willing to take a stand that healing is possible. I mean, that's where it starts. That's where, when you have a critical mass, whether it's in your family for something much smaller than the Middle East, even though it may feel like it at times, that when there is a critical mass of belief that a solution and healing is possible, that's when you start to see the steps unfold for that particular thing. So even try that on a personal level. If you've had something difficult with a family or a group of friends, ask yourself, do we as a group believe that a resolution or healing is not possible here? Or do we believe that it's possible and we just haven't gotten there yet? And I know we've all at different times written things off, haven't we? It's like, healing will never happen, whatever. I've also found that healing has a way of coming back. That sometimes we put it aside, it'll never happen, but it starts to germinate. So it can happen. And so part of this is getting past the very either-or kind of judgments we get not only with ourselves and the world. It's like, it can happen sort of thing. Or, gee, I would like to do something, but who am I to do something kind of thing. The chapter after the giving the A, can't remember the name of it, but it talks about making a contribution to the world. First of all, and how we judge our contribution. It's never enough. Or look at that person over there. Look what they just did. They just won the Nobel Prize. I can barely get out of my pajamas, and look what they did, kind of thing. You know, the universe does not know quantity or degree. It just knows truth. We often think that I can't allow this to happen because in my human mind, I have judged the quantity to be too much. Whereas I might think I judge this to be solvable because I have judged the quantity to be bite-sized and we can get right down to that before dinner kind of thing. So remember that this power of the divine of spirit does not know degree or quantity. It just creates. It creates with us, it creates with our belief. And so to start to think that how you make a contribution to the world, it's not how you judge quantity. Just like with this class, you can always get an A as long as you show up and engage. That's kind of it. Show up and engage. And you may judge your quantity being more or less as someone else, but challenge yourself not to. It's not about our judgment of quantity. It's about, again, showing up and engaging. So this type of just ideas have really changed the way that I do my personal prayer work, meaning not praying to something else. Prayer is accepting what can come into your life. That's really basically what it is. It's not trying to get a God out there to give you stuff because up until now they've not been in the mood. It's actually removing the blockages that we have put up to receive. And I'm not saying like, I'm so beyond a list of things that I want. Aren't you? It's like Santa Claus list. Who cares? So my prayers for my spouse, especially at any point of our life, as much as we would like to think we can, you cannot really outline your life. You can say you will do something on Tuesday, but who knows if we'll even be here on Tuesday? The one thing that is known about the world is that it is unknown. So the heart of my intentionality is simply that I show up and make a contribution that will make a difference on some level. That's it. Honestly, that's really it. Even when I look 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, the further away you get, the more unknown the physical world is in your life. And simply as my long-range plan is to continue to make a contribution, knowing that it will show up differently as my life shifts. That it's not about me trying to come up with what do I need to be up to from a year from now. I don't know. None of us can know. But you can be really focused and centered in that energy of, I'm here to make a contribution. It may look completely different in 6 months, a year, 2 years. I may be in a completely different city. I may have completely different friends. But to know that I am driven by that. Because here's the other thing with the universe and we are quantity. If you were focused on that larger purpose, which I believe is making a contribution, anything you need will just be there. No, really. And I don't mean that to be like airy-fairy, Pollyanna sort of thing, but it really has a way of showing up. If you're focused on what is important, what is truly important is part of the package. Does that mean you're going to have a new car every 6 months? Probably not. Maybe you've got the money for a new car every 6 months. Great, enjoy it. We don't. But what I have found miraculously even, what we really need is there. It's like you can't keep it away from you. And so get away from this idea of, so we kind of think of elevated consciousness is getting everything I want. Don't we kind of? And even when you look in metaphysical books, it's like, how can I manifest? Kidding. Nothing wrong with stuff. But here's this idea. So of a larger elevated consciousness where your only focus is to make a contribution is a state of consciousness where lack does not exist. In other words, the concept that you couldn't have everything you need does not exist. So it's not this game of trying to get the stuff into your house that you feel you need. It's building a house where you know that everything you need is always there. And I know it can be a hard shift. But anything significant has shown up in your life, I promise you, you at least put your toe in that water of, I'm in a place where everything I need is already there. You might not even realize it, but you did, because that's the only way that it shows up. You did, in spite of yourself. You entertained the idea of a higher state of consciousness where there's not even a concept of not having everything that you need to support your life at where you are. So think of that. I'm just going to close with one more little quote about contribution. It says, naming oneself and others as a contribution produces a shift away from self-concern and engages us in a relationship with others that is an arena for making a difference. Rewards in the contribution game are of a deep and enduring kind, though less predictable than the trio of money, fame, and power that accrue to the winner in the success game. You never know what they will be or from whence they will come. So let's take this in and give thanks for this amazing day that we can pretend winter will never come. That our lawn is available forever. For those at home, we're having wonderful weather. So it is a consciousness where everything that we need is right here. It may even seem miraculous, but it's not. It's just a state of consciousness that we have invited into our experience, and we give thanks for this. And so as we give thanks for this, we just have one affirmation in our minds, in our consciousness. We can say within ourselves, I am here to make a contribution. I release my attachment to what that looks like. I release any fear and anxiety around my belief about that type of contribution. I just show up. I'm present. I'm engaged. And in this Thanksgiving, I take this thought, this affirmation, this idea of truth, and let it go. I let the universe work on it. I let the universe figure out what I need. I'm just thankful. And so it is. Well, thank you all for coming today, and I want to speak to you guys at home. How can we give you a welcome packet? So we're in a world that we're rethinking the world, aren't we? So before the C period, we don't even like to say the word COVID anymore. During that difficult and unusual period, we had more people in the room than we did at home. Now we have more people at home than we have in the room. Last week, we estimated that we had about 95 people present at home. So it's been slowly increasing. So you at home, how can we make you feel at home with us? Would you like an online class that's just for you? Do you just like being anonymous? Would you like to be less anonymous? Email us at office@lightonthemountains.org. Or let us know where you are. I just find that interesting, don't you? So how do we serve these people, you guys, in a way that you would like to be served? How would you like, what would give you maybe more of a sense of belonging as you are kind of just looking from the bird's eye view? Let me know. I'd like to know. What can I say? So with that, go out and enjoy this amazing day. We maybe have one more like this, so just go outside, chase the sheep, put on a pair of shorts and flip-flops, and go nuts before you put them away. Just be grateful for this day. So thank you. And R.L., bring us home.
Let's finish by singing together on page 3 in your songbook.